EQ can actually jump up in minutes. It doesn't have to take a long time. It can actually take minutes. And if you've been misinformed, it will take a lot longer. It can happen a lot quicker. There are things we don't know, and I can guarantee you, what is there more of? Things we know or things we don't know? There's always a lot more that we don't know. So change can happen really fast.
Hi there, Adrian here, and this is a video from a Zoom session that we do. We do these Zoom sessions every Sunday, and we take questions and answers from the audience. Some of our students, some of our members. We never know what questions are coming up, so I'm always excited to do these sessions, and I hope to see you at one of them. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below and check out the other playlists that we have. Thank you, enjoy.
There are many ways of learning, and lecturing is not my style. I do have a little bit to share with you though. I'm going to set up the scene a little bit, and then we're going to get into the world of emotions, and I'll share with you a couple of models that you've seen before, and definitely at least one that you've never seen, to help you get more of an understanding for emotions. Now from here, we can put in the emotion of anxious, but we could also put in the emotional flow. So if you have clients and you want to increase their level of flow or make it easier for them to get into flow, or you could just as easily replace flow with discipline, confidence, happiness, love, whatever kind of emotion, whatever kind of state you want, you'll be able to put it into this model. This, what we're going to get into, will help you get a deeper understanding of any emotional state. Now, one thing some people will be exposed to is submodalities. And we're not looking at the normal submodalities, but something similar to submodalities, but specifically for emotions. So we know the brain encodes things in different ways. And some of the ways we have it encoded, the code we may refer to as a submodality or code. But we're going to be looking at something like submodalities, but for emotions themselves. Yeah. So if you know how submodalities affect pictures or sounds, you know submodalities for emotions can do a lot as well.
I just also want to share before starting what I have read from Daniel Goleman. He is creator of this book, Emotional Intelligence. Yes. He says emotions, managing emotions is our day-to-day activity. So all we are doing, we are managing emotions during the day. Even though we are exercising, we are doing something, we are reading. Even though we are coming here, we came to manage some emotional state.
The Daniel Goleman book, Emotional Intelligence, we're going to cover, but we're not going to cover so much the book. No. We're going to move deeper than the book. So in this training, we're moving into an advanced intelligence model. In a couple of the past sessions, we've covered unconscious signals, N-step, reframing, ICF coaching, how to build a coaching business. And I do this because I want to see you guys win. There's a lot of people in this space in the scarcity mindset. There's a lot of people in this space still learning, and I am still learning too. I just happen to be a couple of steps in front of most coaches, most, not all by any means. And I stand on the I stand on the shoulders of other wonderful coaches. So I love learning from the best and sharing it with whoever cares, whoever wants to listen with an open heart and mind. So I've already set up some framing for this session. In Claire, just before, when Claire joined this group, instead of the name Claire, she had these numbers there. So she changed the numbers to her name, and Claire, this is part of framing. Yep, some people put characters after their name. They might put he, she, shim, whatever it is nowadays. I've got trainer under my name. Klaus has his name in Chinese. This is part of framing. Framing is everywhere. Framing helps us go along. Okay? So all content has no meaning on its own. So we add some framing to it. The framing we give to it helps us shape the meaning. Our frame helps us shape our reality, designs our experiences, and our framing can actually get in the way. Frames can be made explicit. I'm telling you right now, you'll see my name in my Zoom, Adrian Cahill trainer. So that trainer, before it was implicit, it was there. You weren't aware of it. Now I'm directing your attention there. Do you notice my name? It says trainer. So I'm putting your attention there. I'm making it explicit. Before it was implicit. In fact, it's there all along. I'm making it explicit so you can see it more clearly. Frames can be made explicit, and making the frames explicit helps us learn it consciously. If it's implicit, we may learn it, but not be aware of it. Models, and I'm going to show you two models and then our super model. Models are essentially frames or frameworks made explicit. Anyone can make their own model. Has anyone here made a model before? Even a little one?
I tried.
Awesome.
I tried to make so-called model like protocol, and then from this protocol I tried to make a working model, something like that. I tried.
Good on you. Anyone can make a model. Anyone can. So Daniel Goleman, he was an author, journalist, marketer. He was actually a writer for, I think it was Psychology Today back in the early 90s. And he wrote this book about emotional intelligence. Someone bought me a copy of that book, and they bought me a copy of the book because I was really lacking in emotional intelligence. If I can learn it, anyone can. So Daniel Goleman made emotional intelligence. He brought it to the mainstream. It was always there. He just brought it to the mainstream, and he was a good marketer. And it can be a really good book. I like the book. So that book and models are an explicit framework, and that assists the conscious processing. It assists the conscious processing. So if we're working with EQ, it can be good to have an EQ model so we can have the conscious processing. But the magic, the real magic, is in the unconscious. The real magic is with the unconscious, but the conscious sets the scene, sets the frame. So framing is incredibly important. Monica here does some great work. But if you give Monica bad framing, it'll be so much harder for her to do her work. Put a good framework around it. People know what they're in for. She can do magic. But it's got to have good framing and a good framework. The models, and actually all communication, is an attempt. We can't speak the truth. We try to speak the truth. You can take any one sentence and tear apart and say how it's wrong. And the truth is, communication is like surface level. It's the deeper communication, and that deeper communication is more like the unconscious. So there are limits. There are gray areas. There's in between. We have a saying in NLP, the map is not the territory. Some people know clearly what this means. When you're driving to a town and the map tells you, if you're driving to Shanghai, driving your car to Shanghai, and you see a big sign saying, "Welcome to Shanghai," does anyone ever go off the road and drive into the sign? We don't drive off into the sign. The sign just means we're in Shanghai. So the map or the model, if it works, use it. But when it stops working, stop using it. Remember your intentions and your client's intentions. We want to use maps and communication to attain results. Sometimes people get lost in their maps. True, yeah? Sometimes people get lost in their maps.
May I ask a question, Adrian?
Please do. Anytime you
About
like.
the third point, like real magic of this with the unconscious. I don't know if you raised an example as well. For me, it's like a lot of things which are happening not only in politics, but let's say marketing or advertisements. It's all about this framing or even reframing, which happens in an unconscious way for us consumers. Right? Would this be a good example for this? Because most of the framing is done unconsciously, deliberately, and so even more dangerous. What do you think?
100%. Can you give a really clear example for someone that may not be as tuned in?
Well, one example, just going to advertisement, maybe just a framing, maybe. Well, I'm German, as you hear, so we see a lot of promotion for cars, like let's say BMW. We see wonderful pictures, but it's not a picture which is being shot like in a traffic jam, which might be quite common or normal. No, we see maybe wonderful landscape, mountains, river. So connecting this picture of a car with maybe nature or freedom is a total framing. Yeah, if they do it like, and you want to buy the car because you are longing, you're craving for freedom and nature, right? So we unconsciously connotate maybe the car with the picture behind, with the frame of nature. Of course, this is not true. This is total manipulation. I think this is one example.
That is a
Do you get my meaning? Yeah.
I get 100%, and I hope everyone else can get this. You see the BMW example, and you're buying it because it looks great, and it might be what you want, triggering your needs and stuff. Yet, reality, you can actually walk out in nature on your own 2 feet. Or a different reality, maybe you're going to end up in the same traffic jam, only in a better car. And that is implicit. The background, the forest, and how they're trying to sell you the concept of freedom, or the family, and you got the family and the kids, you know, and they're implicitly trying to sell you this kind of emotion of the family and the kids, and you're such a high status person because you drive the fancy car. So all this, you're the high status person, is implicit. It's implicit. It's often outside of your conscious awareness, therefore it's unconscious, and that's how they sell people. On a much, yeah, all the McDonald's burgers spinning around, right? Big Mac spinning around, and lettuce and water dripping off it. Now, when it comes to coaching, the framework, for example, hi Bob. Hey Bob, in this session we've got 45 minutes, and we're going to get through a problem, and at the end of the session, blah 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 blah. Okay, Bob, you ready to go? Great. Okay, Bob, what are we going to work on today? Yeah? This kind of framework of, Bob, we're going to have a 45-minute session, and you're going to get some kind of result and walk out. This kind of framework for coaching or therapy helps set the scene. If you go into a therapist office and you walk into a therapist, you know, you wait outside for a while. Ding, you know, someone walks out, you know, 5 minutes later, you walk in there, you sit down in this comfy chair, and the therapist starts to talk slowly, you know what you're going to get. It's already framed as a therapist. The real magic isn't in the, hey, Bob, we're going to have a 45-minute conversation, and we're going to talk about the grow models. The real magic isn't in the conscious, but that conscious stuff helps facilitate. It helps facilitate the unconscious work. In fact, if you spend time with a quality coach, even if it is outside the coaching arena, there'll be a transfer. The unconscious does a dance. Remember, just doing a marathon, not a marathon. I normally run 10 kilometers. I met this marathon runner, and I stayed with his family, and we were talking for a couple of hours about marathons. And then in the morning, we got up really early, and we woke up at the same time, and we were matching and mirroring. High level of rapport. I matched his breathing. I matched everything that I could. We went out and ran, and I never ran so far in my life. It was amazing. Yeah, because it was an unconscious transfer of excellence. This thing I just put in there is because when one of my trainers said it for me, it was a big ding, a big light bulb moment. That the coaching framework, coaching call, it's just a setup so the unconscious can dance. The unconscious dance is where it's at. Okay, so models are frameworks, right? If we move into the Daniel Goleman model, this is just cut and copy from Google. Typical square, cut in a 4. The top is recognition. The bottom half is regulation. One side is self. One side is other. You can make your own model. Just get 2 axes, put it together. 4 quadrants. Models are great. Now, when I read this, I thought it was awesome, and it really opened up my world to emotional intelligence. Okay, this is one model of many for it. We're not going to go too much into this model, but I'll share with you why. Does anyone remember a key point they learned from this book? Or would anyone like to share a little bit they learned from this book? If you do, shout out. If you don't, that's cool. What I learned from this book was the amygdala hijack. And the amygdala is like this thing in the brain, and you get the hippocampus, and you got these kind of parts. And what happens is the amygdala hijack gets flooded, and all the blood runs there, or it runs somewhere else, and people can't think straight. And anyway, it didn't quite make sense to me. Well, it made sense to me that there was an amygdala hijack, but something was missing for me. The how. How do you actually do this? How do you actually improve your EQ? So reading the book, great. Learning NLP, great. Being coached, great. Going therapy, great. Learning more about yourself, great. These are all great. So it's good to learn models. I thought the bit that was missing from it was the how. Now, who knows this one? The format model. Claus and Darko probably know it inside out. The format model, this is the most common model that we use for training others. I learned this in the Army back in early 2000. When we start training, we want to give a good why. Now, both of these circles are the same model, but it gives them different information. When we're training and coaching others, if we're helping someone raise their emotional intelligence, if we're helping ourselves, we need a good why. Starting with the number 1. We start with one for a reason. And Simon Sinek spoke about this as well. I don't know if you guys saw the Simon Sinek talk, but he discovered this. He doesn't tell you he discovered it in a book, but he discovered it. I discovered it too. I'll just tell you up front, I discovered this in a book. Actually, I discovered this in a whole pile of books and trainings. I discovered this in the Army. Simon Sinek will just tell you he discovered it. There's a little something missing out there. He doesn't like to tell you where he got it from. I also got this from Google. So Simon's got a book called Always Start With Why. And it's good. You want to get people's buy-in. That's why at the very start of this session, I want to get your buy-in. I want to tell you why this is important for you. By telling you why this is important, you're more likely to listen. Then we're going to talk about what. And I actually give you a bit of an overview. In this session, we're going to cover this stuff. I actually told you a little bit about how we're going to do it. And I may have mentioned the if. And it might not have been if, but I'm going to give you this so that you can help other people. So the format 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 is how we work as trainers in general. Advanced NLP people, of course, we've got a more detailed one. We work with about 8 or 12 in the cycle. But the format method is something every trainer, speaker, presenter should learn. If you know a speaker and a presenter, if they don't know this, they're not really a presenter. Everyone knows this. This is like basic for the trainers, but it's great. So if we look at these four, you get people engaged by talking about why, and then what we're going to cover, how we actually do it. The fourth one there is if. That's like a what if, that's like a future pacing. Coaching sessions actually go like this. Why, what, how, if. A lot of things go like this. Some people have a large passion for the why. Some people like philosophy. We got philosophers in here. I got a friend right here, by the way. Philosopher. Lots of people like philosophy. Yeah. So a lot of people like the why for philosophy. The what is data generally. A lot of people like to get information. I personally, I'm a how person. How I like to implement. And some people, the what if people, they're not even here. They're just out there doing it already. So the Daniel Goleman was missing a lot of the how. The lower circle gives you the same model, but a bit of a different context around it. Get people to discuss why, give them information, coach them into how to do it, and then the self-discovery future pace. Now, what we're going to zoom in on, I want to take your attention and zoom in a bit on the how, because we all understand why we're here. We all understand what, and I'm going to presume that we all understand what. Now, a key thing right here, don't look at the words on the right yet. You see inform, I've got a red circle around it. So the thing about the how is we actually have to include a bit of the inform and refine to really make an effective how. If we go through this kind of format of, why, what, how, and if, so you see the psychologist, and then you see the GP, and then you go to practice. Okay, no. So you understand why, and then you get the what. But what happens if that why and what is wrong? If that why or the what is wrong, the inform, if that's wrong or not for you, you can end up practicing the wrong skill. You can end up practicing the wrong thing, and you can try and practice your ass off. But if you've got wrong information from the start, you're not going to get the great result there. I think Daniel Goleman's made a massive contribution and a lot of appreciation, and I loved him. And also Joe Dispenza. I'm not sure if we got Joe Dispenza fans here. Joe Dispenza, great work. But you don't have to sit and meditate for hours. If you want to practice something, if you want to become more mindful, if you want to reduce anxiety, we can actually reduce anxiety in 30 minutes, maybe even 5 minutes. If you want to reduce it forever, I don't know, maybe 35 minutes. Darko is going to speak about that specific thing next week. But with good information, we can actually make a lot of that change and that EQ change so much faster. Oh, okay, great. That matches up with the couple of bullet points I've written on the right. So how long does change take? I was sitting with a psychotherapist, a doctor psychotherapist, and the client, and I was a third person in the room. Me, client, psychotherapist, and the psychotherapist told the client, change takes a long time. Many of my clients see me for years. Some of my clients see me for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Change takes a long time. And I have a very solid regret. I have a big regret in my life. And one of the biggest regrets I have in my life is that I didn't punch him in the face. He should lose his license for that. but the licenses are fraud anyway. That was an absolute disgrace. So here you have a doctor helping a client and telling them change takes like 5, 6, 7 years, which is utter bullshit. And I'm sure you guys can understand that. Change can actually happen in an instant. Change can happen in minutes. I'm not saying that the client can change right there in minutes, but things can happen to cause change in minutes. With me? Okay. So be very careful we don't. Now, I'm not going to guarantee to my client that they're going to change very fast, but I'm definitely not going to be giving them any kind of impression that change is going to take a long time. I would much rather frame that it can happen really quick. And we've all known people that have had a heart attack, or they've had an insight, they've had a learning, or they've seen things from another perspective, and just like that, change. Yeah? I had bulletproof coffee for 7 years, and I was told this and that, but suddenly I just had this thought, and like that, bang, next day I changed my coffee. Yeah. People have smoked cigarettes all their life, and then suddenly they had a child or something's happened and they just changed. I had a client, Raymond, he made this picture, GM of one of the Hiltons. I said to him something about smoking and he quit just like that. Change happens in an instant. It doesn't always happen, but it can. So if we go back to this model, EQ can actually jump up in minutes. It doesn't have to take a long time. It can actually take minutes. And if you've been misinformed, it will take a lot longer. It can happen a lot quicker. There are things we don't know, and I can guarantee you, what is there more of? Things we know or things we don't know? There's always a lot more that we don't know. So change can happen really fast. Okay, just briefly, these are some of the guys I've learned from. John Grinder, Richard Bandler, they created NLP. I've learned from John and Richard directly, face to face, and John's wife now, or partner, sorry, Carmen Bostic, absolutely amazing. They created the NLP thing. John and Richard Bandler, they're partners at the time, Judith DeLoisa and Leslie Bandler Cameron. Absolutely amazing women. They're not in this picture. I haven't learned from them directly, but they are also huge contributors to the field. And I'm sharing one of their models tonight. I've also trained directly for a couple of the other gentlemen here, Robert Dilts and Gilligan. These are all like the earliest faces in NLP. And I just got picked to speak on this Coaching Masters Summit thing, which I'm going to skip for now. So I'm about to share with you some of Leslie's work. And I just wanted to share that bit because this is from the creators of NLP, if that means anything. And when I look at the Coaching Masters Summit, I'm the youngest person in that room. And the way I got picked for that, I think, is because I've learned from the best in the world, and I'll happily go fly around the world to learn from the best. I considered going over to see Joe Dispenza. I did his training online, and after doing his training online, I was like, great, okay, I have no real need to see him face to face. But Richard Bandler, on the other hand. So I'm going to share with you an absolute nugget from them. And I like the comments in the chat window here. I don't want your money. I want you all to get a bit better at your work to help make this world a better place. Let's just focus on making the world a better place. So I'm going to share with you one of the absolute gold models from them, which has not been shared before. Let me just share the screen again. Okay, so 3 cats here. And you could say these are, I got Monica freaking out. It's like 3 cats, Adrian, really? 3 cats?
No, I said the word cat, dogs went running. Sorry, I do apologise.
The 3 cats, different is they're all framed differently. And the framing of the cats affects our perception. If you could imagine walking into your friend's place and they had these cat pictures, or even if they had these 3 pictures of different frames, if they had these 3 exact pictures, you would have different thoughts about all of them. So what's the frame around an emotion? And my goal here, my intention is for you to gain a more accurate understanding of emotions. So question, how do you actually know what emotion you're experiencing? How do you actually know?
Because you've had physical sensations before and somebody gave you a name for them. And so you're thinking back and remembering what it was, and you're sticking that name on it again.
Physical sensations, someone else has given you a label for it. Memory.
And you have thoughts and memories that go with them.
And your thoughts and memories that go with it. What's the chances of something being wrong in that process?
Everything could go wrong.
So then how do we tell the differences between the emotions? We look back into our memory again.
I would say memory, yeah.
We go back into our memory again, or they feel a little bit different. So one thing we might say is that the actual structure of an emotion might come down to cognition, thoughts, feelings, and focus. And the physiology side of the house, breathing, nervous system, chemistry, whatever kind of chemicals are pumping around in the body. Perhaps a combination of this cognition, physiology, along with the memory and the patterns. So a couple of models, a couple of really good models, you just break down emotion and you throw out the cognition, the physiology, the memory, or the patterns. And there might be some other stuff that you could throw in there. I think that's basically it, yeah? You get your physical sensation, you know, maybe the heart's beating faster or something, and your memories that you're like, oh, that's anxious or that's anxiety. But a lot of it comes down to memory and patterns. We're going to go a bit different from here. We're going to look at the cognition side of the house. There's a really good NLP process called Grinder's Chain of Excellence. And John Grinder says, you got your breathing, and that affects your physiology. And your physiology affects your processing. Like this is wrong, your processing or your emotional state. And this affects your performance. So from this chain, you actually there's a whole pile of ways to change the breathing, a whole pile of ways to change your physiology, a whole pile of ways to change the thinking and the state, a whole pile of ways to change behavior. This is what I like to make clients realize. And if I'm speaking on stage, this is something I really got to get people to realize, is that this means that there's a million ways that people can change. Yeah? There's an infinite number of ways people can change. And you can get a book that talks about breathing, a book that talks about physiology, and this physiology book's going to tell you to do Superman or do Qigong. I love Qigong, by the way. Some other people in this room do Qigong too, right? It's great. And some other people work directly on thoughts and states and behavior. Reality is you can work in a whole variety of different ways, and a whole variety of these different ways can change the emotion. There's not one way. There is not one solution, and it's me, and you got to pay $99 and you do my online course and come into my sales funnel and do my $9,900 business mastermind. absolute BS. There's a whole pile of ways, to create change and to grow. So we're looking at what the structure for the emotion is. In the cognition side of the house, we have the intensity of the emotion, the tempo, the time frame, the criteria or complex equivalence, and this helps us really understand the emotion, and it's really valuable to do this for a challenging emotion. If we move forward a bit more, there's a couple more things. The comparison, what are we comparing to? And then we have a modal operator. When you think about that challenging emotion, when you're in that challenging emotion, what's your modal operator? And for people that don't know what that is, and I can guarantee you, even NLP trainers, most of them don't really even get it that much as well. There's actually something like 200, 300 different modal operators that people can use, but people generally function with only a few modal operators, such as I can or I choose. Now, when I'm angry, I'm not thinking I choose. When I'm angry, I'm thinking I must. I'm thinking they must. They must understand. They have to. So they have to and they must is very different from I choose. See? These modal operators work in the background, but you can actually hear them. We can hear our clients using these modal operators. I can't, I shouldn't, I have to. And as you look deeper in these and learn more, we can go about our work in a whole pile of different ways. If I hear someone saying I shouldn't, in the coaching world, shouldn't is generally a values conflict. Should, as in like someone else is imposing a value system that doesn't match theirs. Or a part of me says I should and part of me says I shouldn't. That's a values level conflict. But that's a bit too coach specific. So if you're using a coaching modality, and you want to help change your client's emotions, you could challenge that. I like to get people thinking about could and can and what's possible and choose. And I like to have people saying, I can choose. See, there's two here. I can choose. And as I go through life, I like to think I can choose rather than I have to, or I must, or I should. So the tricky emotion has a modal operator. I just got two more, very easy ones. Involvement. Think about that emotion again. Is that emotion like all over you and you're like active and you're like leading it and taking charge? Or is it passive and it's like that emotion has taken over you? A lot of these challenging emotions are a bit more like, it's like the emotion has taken over us. So that's like passive involvement. So active, it's coming from me, or passive, it's taken over me. A final one in here is chunk size. Chunk size. Little details or big picture. Coaches often use this as well. I hear you're challenging right now, but let's look at the big picture. Yeah. Or a lot of reframing, we simply change the chunk size. Makes good sense, hey? So we just change the chunk size, we change the emotion. So here are 8 different features or submodalities that break down the cognition functions inside of a criteria. So you can pick any challenging emotion and you can simply take your client through this. and you can just as easily take yourself through it. If you want to take yourself through it, have a chair, have your things written up, have all 8 of them written on a whiteboard, or put it up on the notes or on the computer screen so you can see it. Yeah. Have your chair or your circle you stand in. Go stand in your circle. Put the emotion of, remember a time when I felt. So pick your emotion, anger. You can even pick flow state or happiness or peace and love. Do you want to feel more peace and love? Whatever state you want to get more of or want to get a better grip on, put it in there. One emotion at a time, one emotion, fully get it on. Maybe extract the first 2, intensity, tempo, step out. That's a good anchor. Come back in. Go for the rest. Time frame, criteria, comparison, modal operator, involvement, chunk size. Yeah. Then come out. Because you've just made the unconscious conscious, now that you've got this written down, you can actually make changes to it.
Boom! You made it here! Good on you. Make sure you click the subscribe button below and check out the playlist at the end. If you'd like to come along to our Sunday sessions where we host a live free Q&A for our students and members, you're welcome. I'll see you there.